Sawyer, and I am the Director of Academic Programs for the Learning by Giving Foundation. Welcome, everyone. We have a relatively intimate group, so we have arranged ourselves in this semicircle. And we're here to talk about the impact of experiential philanthropy courses on students, but we have other than just students in the group, so just by show of hands, who in the room, in the circle, is our students? Yes, we have. Oh, good. We have some good student group. Okay, wonderful. And then we have 2 faculty members. Great. Anybody else? Well, we have a wonderful panel. We're so lucky to have these 3 very talented young women here with us, and they're going to talk about this issue from different perspectives. We have Laura McNulty, who's the Director of Special Projects at the Action Tank here in Boston, and she, you can read more about her in the bios, but she was an alum of an experiential philanthropy class at Tufts, and also took a wonderful plunge right into nonprofit work when she left, including becoming the founding director of Health Horizons International, a nonprofit in the Dominican Republic. We also have Katherine Westlund, who is the manager of the nonprofit effectiveness, do you call it program, or? Sure. Of nonprofit effectiveness at the Boston Foundation, and also an enthusiastic student of philanthropy at a younger age, actually, than college. She started her involvement in high school. And then we have Jodi Benenson, who is a fellow at the Brandeis at the Heller School, and she has a particularly unique perspective because she is finishing a report on the evaluation of a very large national program in college philanthropy in Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan that did a statistical analysis based on surveys taken by students and by faculty. So it's a very important research. So I think without further ado, we're going to have, just as a roadmap, we're going to have each of the panelists speak for a while and for a short time, and then we're just going to get into small groups and see if we can have some discussion around some questions that we have for you, and then we'll report back out. And we are being filmed so that this session can be offered or watched by funders, by schools that are interested in experiential philanthropy classes. So thank you for participating. So I will start with Laura. You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I know my voice doesn't project that well, but so as Louise mentioned, I was a student at Tufts University. I graduated in 2008. And what Louise did not mention is that the experiential philanthropy class that I took, she was actually the professor of. So it was a wonderful experience to take that course. And that particular course was funded by the Sunshine Lady Foundation. And the way that it worked, which I'm sure is very similar to the way that a lot of your classes work, is that we split up into 2 groups. We each came up with a name and a set of RFPs for a grant. We worked with partner organizations within the Somerville, Medford, and Chinatown communities and wrote a grant on their behalf. Our classmates evaluated the grant according to the RFP, and then we actually awarded the funding. So the organization that I partnered with was LIFT, which I think I'm seeing some nods. Okay, I know that Northeastern has at least a partnership with the LIFT boss. Is it the Roxbury site that people volunteer at?
I would assume.
Probably.
So
it's probably the closest. Yeah. So I partnered with LIFT Somerville and wrote a capacity building grant for their advisory board, and it was fortunate enough to be funded. So that was exciting for me, and sort of one of the first experiences that I had with both grant writing, but then also with grant making. And then just by a sort of series of fortunate events, I ended up being hired as the site coordinator for LIFT Somerville the year after I graduated, and it's an AmeriCorps position, so very direct service oriented, but also very much learning about how to manage a small nonprofit, community partnerships, client service, volunteer management, infrastructure. As I'm sure many of you know who work at nonprofits or who volunteer with nonprofits now, in a small organization, you wear all hats. So I never thought I would be the IT person, but I also was. And it was also really exciting because the funding from the grant that I had written and that was then given to Lyft, I actually got to implement because I became the site coordinator the following year. So I sort of got to see the whole trajectory of how this grant-making process works. So that was great and exciting. And then when I was at Tufts as a student as well, in conjunction with taking the Experiential Philanthropy class, in conjunction with volunteering at Lyft as an undergrad, I was also involved with an organization called TIMI Global Health, which was involved in sending short-term medical service trips to the Dominican Republic. TIMI Global Health itself is based in Indianapolis, and they have student chapters all around the country, and they're all partnered with different international partner organizations, mostly in Latin America. So the Tufts team just happened to be partnered with the Dominican Republic. So we would spend the whole year sort of fundraising, gathering medications, and then we would convene a whole group of physicians and students and go down to the Dominican Republic for a week, work with a partner organization, go into various communities and treat patients as they came into these makeshift clinics. And over the course of the 4 years that I was involved in doing that at Tufts, it very much struck me that this was very much there was only so much you could do in a week when the underlying health issues that the patients that we would see in our makeshift clinics were facing were the result of years of exposure to pathogens due to the lack of sanitation and lack of potable water access within the community, due to unhealthy lifestyle because of lack of access to adequate nutrition, backbreaking labor, all of these sort of more public health oriented issues that we couldn't even scratch the surface of in a week. But as students, we kind of decided, well, what are we going to do? So we tried to, do some hand washing education, do some sort of, song and dance about brushing your teeth with the kids when we were in the DR. But the year after I graduated, when I was working at Lyft, TIMI Global Health decided to relocate the Tufts chapter from the Dominican Republic to Guatemala for a whole host of just sort of strategic reasons on their part. But that sort of left an opportunity for myself and one of my classmates and a few of the physicians who had always gone on these trips to the DR to decide, well, we know that the way that we have been doing this is probably not the long-term solution to the health issues that patients are facing. So let's figure out what is. So we decided to found our own organization called Health Horizons International. I moved down to the Dominican Republic in the fall of 2009 with a very blank slate of deciding to figure out what is the way that we as an international organization can partner with the existing communities in the DR, with the existing health system, and with other nonprofits in the area to actually address some of these underlying issues that cause people to be experiencing poor health in the first place. So taking a really community health oriented approach to international development and global health. So that ties back into philanthropy because as a startup nonprofit, we obviously had zero funding, and so I was able to draw on a lot of what I had learned in Louise's class about how to actually write a grant, how to pitch to donors. And we were very fortunate to secure seed funding from the Do Something Foundation, which focuses exclusively on the age 25, 26 or so and under population, on social entrepreneurs, people or young people who have great ideas about how they want to create social change, and just providing seed funding to enable that to happen. So, so after living in the DR for that year, we've grown quite significantly. We now have 3 full-time staff members in the Dominican Republic, and our mission is around the provision of primary health care and capacity building in order to enable our partner communities to improve health within their communities. So our sort of flagship program is the Community Health Workers Program, in addition to a series of health system strengthening programs in 4 communities on the north coast of the DR. So that's essentially my story. I think that's probably about my 6 minutes. So looking forward to questions and whatnot as we continue.
Okay, well, excuse me. And then you left that position because of the stage of growth of the organization, and are now working on a new initiative. Do you want to say anything about
Sure, definitely. As Louise mentioned, I stepped down as executive director in September of this past year, so September of 2012, because recognizing that we were at a point in the organization's development where we had a really strong program model, but in order to scale it, we would need massive infusion of funding through government partnership and also through individual donor engagement. And in order to do that, we actually wanted to be partnering with with the Dominican government and with Dominican funders. And I was just not at a point in life where I wanted to move back to the DR for an extended period of time. So what we ended up doing was going through a long kind of succession planning and transition planning process, hired an absolutely phenomenal new executive director who is based in the DR, has about 25 years of experience leading nonprofits in Latin America specifically. So we're very fortunate that has worked out as it has. And I'm still on the board of directors. We actually have a meeting this Saturday, so I'm fortunate to be able to still be involved. But in coming back to the United States, I'm now working on another startup organization that's actually a strategic consulting firm called the Action Tank. It is founded in October, right when I sort of came on board, by Alan Casey, who's the founder of City Year, or co-founder of City Year, founder of Be the Change here in Boston. So it's exciting to be working with someone who has such just extensive experience in social entrepreneurship, in policy change and systems change, in direct service. So, and also to be on the consulting side is a little bit different from sort of the direct service work that I've been involved in the past. So it's still a very startup stage at this point, but working on a lot of exciting projects. And he's kind enough to let me step out of the office to come to do this today as well.
We thank you. We thank him for that. Thanks so much. So we'll move on now to Katherine Westlund, who also has wonderful experiences very early on in her career and some inspiring words for everybody who's taking a course actually now or will do in the future.
Awesome. Well, as Louise discussed, I've been involved in philanthropy since the age of 14, which is a very unique thing if you walk around foundations and ask their staff members how long they've been engaged in the foundation field. And I originally got involved at my local community foundation, had a youth helping youth program where we were able to administer money, and I immediately became the head of the board and was like, what's a board, what's this, but it was a really awesome opportunity. And I was honored to be able to give out grants, from community foundations ever since I've been involved in philanthropy. So mainly, community foundation dollars, and I'm not someone who would typically otherwise be engaged in philanthropy in that way. So it was really, really amazing. And, I went off to college and decided this was really what I wanted to do. And I've always wanted to be involved in really, really effective and efficient change. And I've really found that I believe that, foundations have the place and are the place to be able to do that. And so I say that because I'm really excited about the opportunity that all of you guys have. That you guys can really get engaged and be involved in philanthropy and really decide that this is a career path you want to have. And it does happen. So, and it is really an awesome opportunity to be able to really engage in effective and efficient work across the community to really change the community. And I knew I always wanted to do that type of work, and I currently manage a program called the Giving Common. It's a database of nonprofit organizations all across the state of Massachusetts. And nonprofits go online and they tell their story, and we work with them to help them to do that. And then it becomes this place where donors and nonprofits can go online, but so can funders, so can any of you. It's phone enabled. If you go, check it out when you want. But they can go and check out that story that those nonprofits have told. And how many of you guys have done grant application processes so far? Do you know where your old grant applications are from your process that you guys did last year? If you wanted them, could you figure out where to find them? Probably not easy, right?
On my computer.
Yeah.
They're all electronic.
So you're a step ahead. So the cool part is that Northeastern is actually taking their grant applications and they're using the Giving Common, which is this database of nonprofits where they talk about their business, their management, their governance, their financials, everything about the organization. And Northeastern is using it as the core of their grant application. So nonprofits fill out the Giving Common, which transfers to 50 platforms across the internet. So we're big on sharing because we don't think you should have to fill out the same thing 50 times. So it transfers all across the internet, and then nonprofits used a Google form. So they just filled out a short form, but they were able to really concentrate on the grant application and on what they're doing. And that's really important because when you think about effective and efficient philanthropy and how do you help folks, those grant applications that are on your computer, which is a step in the right direction, or for some of us are in a storage area that is hard to get to, or who knows where, or on a professor's floor, all sorts of different places, aren't accessible to everybody. And so the time that these nonprofits take to fill out this information is integrated across all of these different places that people can see it, but is also public. So donors can go online to find an organization that might interest them, or they might have just gone to see an organization. So maybe they went to see Lyft, and now they want to see their financials. Well, they can go online and check them out. So I brought some resources in case you guys do want to see profiles. I'm betting you're not paper people, but if you want to see a paper profile, there's some over on the chair too, in case you want to check out what's in the profile. But it's really cool, and it's a great opportunity. I think what's really exciting for me is that I get to work with wonderful students like you guys, but also that it becomes this putting really student philanthropy on the edge of where philanthropy is continuing to go. I mean, it's a really big thing for foundations to be able to think about how do we save nonprofits time, how do we encourage transparency, how do we raise the visibility of our organizations, and how do we do it together so we're not asking people to fill out the same thing over and over again. So I'm really excited to see Northeastern really taking a leadership role in doing that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. It's a really, really interesting platform. Doing a lot for the whole region, the whole state, really. So thank you. And I'm sure there'll be questions about it for both of you. But we'll move on to Jodi now, who is doing this interesting work on the studying the outcomes, the statistical outcomes of the impact of experiential philanthropy courses on students and on faculty.
Yeah.
And does it include the community as well?
It does, but I think today I'm just going to talk about the students.
Okay, great.
But
Wonderful.
So hi, I'm Jodi. I am working on a project called Pay It Forward, which is an initiative that examines philanthropy education courses in 3 states, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky, like Louise mentioned. And we're pretty much studying courses that a lot of you have participated in, these experiential philanthropy courses. Laura is a prime example of our hypothesis that these courses can potentially serve as a venue for people to engage and to really kind of learn about their philanthropic selves and about their communities. And so one thing I really like about these courses is that they provide another opportunity for students just to bridge the campus and community. I think in a lot of schools, especially myself going to college in the Midwest, going to a school in a college town, there was like the separation between the college town and then the rest of the town. And so providing students with an opportunity to, not saying all Midwest schools are like that, but mine was. And so the opportunity just to bridge campus and community experiences, I think, is very valuable because college is a time where a lot of us start developing our own philanthropic identities. And so the study that we're looking at kind of explores the students, faculty, and the communities. And so I just wanted to share just a little bit about what we're finding with the students that we've been looking at. So I wrote these findings down, but just really quickly before I delve into them. The program involves 30 universities at least at the beginning, between 2009 and 2011, which is what we're looking at right now. We're currently entering more data for the year 2012 and this year, and it's just this constant project, which has been great. I'm presenting 2 years of data, and so there have been over 2,000 participants in these courses, which is really exciting to be able to look at these results. And so we gave them a survey, and we've been working very closely with Ohio Campus Compact. Campus Compact, as many of you know, is an organization that really tries to bridge campuses and communities. And so we gave these students a survey, and they filled it out, and it really informed what we know. So the first thing that we were really interested in learning about was what kind of prior experiences students had before coming into the course. And we found that students had an array of experiences. About like 77% came in having contact with a nonprofit. So that was really interesting to find out. But I think 82% had not taken a philanthropy class before. So this was like very new for these students, this philanthropy course idea. I think it would be really interesting to look at how this group compares to students nationwide, and so that's something that we're working on next. And something else that we actually found was that 51% of the students who were participating in these courses had never talked to their parents about their parents' own philanthropic activities, which was actually really surprising. You know, that's not to say that they didn't have conversations with their parents about philanthropy, but it was about their parents' own philanthropy and volunteering. And I think that's really significant, especially when we know that, you know, learning about things at a younger age can really affect people throughout their life trajectory. Another thing that we were looking at was, we were really interested in looking at was, you know, what types of activities do people participate in? I'm sure a lot of you have had experiences, you know, writing the grant or assessing grants or meeting with nonprofit organizations and things like that. And so what we did was we kind of combined these prior experiences that people have with these like aspects of philanthropic courses and looked to see like what types of things might predict confidence in students after they leave the course, and also their likelihood or how they see themselves participating in the future. Because all these tests were only these surveys were only taken after the course, so we only have information on them right after the course. But basically what we found was, and I wrote it down here so I don't screw it up, students' level of engagement, investment in time, and participation in hands-on activities are significant predictors of students' confidence in skills and knowledge about philanthropy after leaving the course. So things like level of engagement, you know, feeling really engaged in the class, feeling like you made a difference, having different challenges, and other different types of engagement, which I'd be happy to talk about more later, predict things like the students feeling like they had the skills and the knowledge to go out and work in their communities. Things like investment of time. People who spent more time in the course on the philanthropy component. Something that I forgot to mention was these courses are taught across various disciplines. So like that was really interesting. I mean, there was one course that was an introduction to chocolate, and they somehow figured out how to put a philanthropy component in this. And so that was really cool, just to see the diversity of courses. And just, you know, I think traditionally these courses have taken place in nonprofit or public administration or business schools, but this was an opportunity to look at things, you know, across criminal justice, psychology, and chocolate. And so, and in terms of like the hands-on experiences that students were getting, things like, you know, when students felt like they were serving as group leaders and did issue research into different areas and had an opportunity to write an RFP, those were types of hands-on activities that were strong predictors of students' confidence over time. And so I guess those are just the primary things I wanted to share with you today. We have some other very exciting findings, including some more qualitative information that really highlights what the students, felt like they got out of the course, but I can share that for another time. And we'll have a report coming out through the Sillerman Center at Brandeis University, where I'm also a doctoral student in my spare time. I believe it's coming out in the next few months. So if you would like to receive a copy of that or want more information, just let me know. I'd be happy to send it to you.
Great, thank you so much. Before we go into just small discussion groups, would anyone like to ask questions of the panelists? Did anything they say trigger a thought in you?
To get onto the platform, what do we Google?
Just go to givingcommons.org.
Givingcommons.org.
And it's giving and then commons, COMMON.org. And there's postcards over there too. But and it's for nonprofits serving or located in Massachusetts. So the really cool part is speaking to like your nonprofit that's, you know, helping the Dominican Republic. We have organizations helping Guatemala that are headquartered out of Massachusetts, helping Nepal. But we also have organizations that are headquartered out of Northern California that have chapters here, like Playworks Boston. And so they have information that's on there too. So it's all sorts of organizations, and there are currently about 700 and another 700 working away. So we're growing really fast. So if you don't see someone you care about, let them know to get on.
And so they are putting their stories, their information. I didn't quite get the grant application part. Is that the proposal that they made to be funded?
So people put on their information about their business practices, their mission, their impact, their governance, and their management, and then we actually analyze their financials and work with them on that. And so for Northeastern students, who are a group of students giving away money through one of their courses, and for other funders across town too, they fill out the Giving Common, and it's got most of the information about who the nonprofit is. So then when the nonprofit goes to fill out their grant application, for the Northeastern students, they actually filled out a Google form. The Northeastern students are pretty hip. And then they answered information about just what the name of the project was, how much money did they want, what was the budget, and a couple of other questions really based on the proposal. But everything else about what the organization did and what their history is and what their impact is and what their financials are and what their board is all coming from the Giving Common, which is public and accessible to everyone. So what they did is they really shrunk down the grant application to about a third of the questions. And really, for nonprofits that were already on the Giving Common, it allowed them to focus their grant application time on just the proposal. And so it really helped them to think through the proposal a lot better, said some of the applicants. But also for organizations that weren't on the Giving Common, it takes what normally would have gone in a closet or on a computer that not everybody can get to and puts it in a public sphere. And then we partner with about 50 different platforms, and we really help the nonprofits through, which is great too, because with some applications you might not feel great about calling up the funder and asking them what something means, but they have this great independent help to be able to think through how they tell their story.
For Laura, I was wondering if you could say what your relationship to philanthropy, like how it changed before you took the Sunshine Lady course, this course sponsored by the Sunshine Lady Foundation, and after. How that, because you're super involved in philanthropy now. Did you picture yourself doing that before? How did it change?
Yeah, that's a really great question. To be honest, I didn't know too much about the philanthropic world at all before taking the class. I had always known that I wanted to be in direct service, be involved in nonprofits, but I didn't know too much about grant writing, about how the other side of the table worked. So I would say that my perspective on it changed because I came to see it as much more of a combination of art and science, as opposed to this just like mystery of there are these rich people up in somewhere and they decide if they're going to grant you money or not. So learning how it is actually a much more systematic process to write a good grant proposal was really interesting for me. I'd always enjoyed writing in general, but just the strategies and the framework for writing a strong grant proposal was just a skill that I didn't really know too much about. So just gaining that experience and skill was one way that my thought or my perspective on philanthropy changed. And then also to be on the side of grant making and assessing my classmates' grant proposals, I think that also gave me a much better perspective when I was then writing grant proposals myself for Health Horizons, just to have an understanding of what might be going through a grant maker's mind as they're deciding whether or not they're going to give my organization funding. So just having that exposure on both sides of the table, I think, was really valuable and not something that I had really known too much about beforehand.
Great. So all the people in the room, all the students in the room, you're halfway through the course, is that correct?
Not currently in the course.
Oh, you're not currently in the course.
Am I the only one, Melissa? Is there only one class that's currently going?
Okay, and otherwise you came from classes in the past?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're going to have some smaller groups, but we're such a small group. I think that's an excellent question that we were going to have smaller groups discuss was how do you see yourselves changing, or how did you see yourself change from the time you took the course until through having taken the course? And if you don't want to talk about a change in yourself, which we would love to have you do, you could also talk about how you saw your peers change, because sometimes that's also something that's very observable. So if anybody wants to join in, we appreciate it.
I can comment. I took the course 2 years ago at this point, and it definitely directed where I see myself and where I want to go. I graduate in May, so I'm studying nonprofit management, which I can confidently say that course gave me a lot of experience, and that I enjoyed it so much that that's the kind of course I wanted to take after the semester I also had the privilege of being the teaching assistant for the course, so I got to see a little bit from a different perspective as well, which was interesting. And I could definitely see some of the students evolve, and of course some more excited about it than others, but just the way as a class everyone made decisions together and heard people out, and it was sometimes we got some good debates going, but everyone, you could see everyone's opinions and after the knowledge they've gained, how they make decisions, and watching them go through the process of decision making from the beginning of the course to the end definitely evolved. And I felt that way being a student in the course myself the year before, based on the lessons, how my thinking evolved throughout the course, and seeing it in the students as a TA was interesting as well.
Right. So you had the double benefit of seeing it in yourself, and then encouraging others and watching others change as well. Here's another question. Do you think, to the extent that any change happens, it is personal, or sort of, or academic/intellectual, or a little bit of both?
What would you mean by academic/intellectual change?
Well, the depth of your knowledge, your ability perhaps to see nuances where you didn't see them before, your ability to analyze a new situation, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't think you can separate those two, because
that's interesting.
Because I think that gaining more academic / intellectual knowledge about a thing will largely inform any personal change that happens for you. So I feel like it's very difficult to make any kind of a personal decision about, in this case being more active or less active in philanthropy, without actually knowing what it is. And I feel, and that's, I've never taken the class, and this is my December, and I work at the law school in Northeastern, and what I find in my work is that it's very difficult to articulate, for students to articulate why they would want to give back to the school, or why they won't or why they will, if they don't truly understand what we're doing. So I think it's, on a larger scale, I think it's very important for every organization to be able to very clearly articulate what they're doing in order to affect that change in their constituents. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Any other?
I would say that I agree with that academic and intellectual and personal change kind of comes the same way. And I think that when something becomes personal to you, you also are willing to, you go out of your way to learn more about it academically and intellectually. So I think that was kind of more what happened with me. Like, I remember I took the class with Professor Campbell, and one of the first questions he asked us that we had to do a little paragraph write-up on was, how do you see yourself in philanthropy? Like, what is you in relation to philanthropy? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I had no idea. I was like, I've volunteered before, but like, only looking back now can I see that then I didn't really get the question until I took the class. So I think realizing first that I had a personal connection to philanthropy and a personal interest in philanthropy made me care so much more about the academic and intellectual pursuit of learning about philanthropy and what it actually does.
That's a great transition. Well, first, do any of the faculty members have any comments on this, your observations of students changing either intellectually or personally or both?
Well, hi, I'm Jodi Schwartz, and I co-taught a philanthropy class at University of Southern Maine in Portland, if you can believe there's a South anywhere. Last fall semester, and I was thinking about the changes that I observed in my students, and I'm sorry they're not here to attest to that, but I can certainly talk about the change in the atmosphere in the class as we went through the semester, and they eventually it culminated in the grants meeting where they made the decisions about the proposals, I could see a real esprit that had grown up among the students in the class that I think was greater than I had seen years ago. I had taught art history classes at that same school. We started out with, in the first class, by asking what was the students to talk about what the greatest gift they ever received or gave was. And I think we happened on that idea that we had gotten from somebody else who had taught the course out in Indiana. And it was a great way to begin because it got them thinking about philanthropy in a different way. And for one, it wasn't all money. For one of our students who had just come over from Iraq 2 years ago, it was the greatest gift that she ever received was her visa. She said it was a piece of paper, and it was that sort of, so we began to differentiate quality in gifts and meaningfulness in personal terms.
Well, I guess what I would say, the moment that I remember most each year, for at least the past 2 years, has been the decision-making process, because all the students recognize that something's at stake, and they feel so responsible. The biggest fights take place at the end, and there's such a sense of passion because there's a recognition of the difference the money can make. Last year, the students made a decision to give $1,000 to an organization that they were really uncertain about its viability, but they had learned that they could give money that would sort of raise awareness. And they believed in the director so much that in the class had this big fight. It's not very much, should we give, but we don't have confidence in the organization, but we believe in this person. And I loved the moment because they all felt so accountable, and they recognized the money could make a difference. And I guess I think in that moment I felt as if the class had really succeeded in creating this commitment to philanthropy, because they saw the decision they were making as consequential. And when you say $10,000 to, as you guys know, to students who are 20 years old, this is probably the first $10,000 they've had to give away. It's probably the first 25 for most of them, so it's really a big deal. And I think it's in that moment that I have sort of, where the change is most concrete, or the appreciation is most concrete.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to follow through on your comment and question actually about how you see yourselves as philanthropists now and in the future, going forward after having taken a class. Does the word philanthropy have a different meaning to you now?
I think it means something as related to your community, because for me, Northeastern students were giving the classes split up into 2 different courses, and I took both of the courses in the same semester. So on one hand, I got to do community scans of the Stony Brook community and understand where the social and economic problems lie, and then talk to organizations and interview people in the field and really get a feel for the place that I live and how I connect to that. So in that way, I think philanthropy's affected the way I personally fit into my community on just my own individual level and how I interact with it, and of course on an academic level and how my other courses relate. And I think that being aware of philanthropy and how you can use it to create positive social change helps you with every other area of your life and other subjects, and understanding how they all interconnect. And I think that through these courses I've learned how all those sectors unite for change and how we can individually play a part in that. So it's kind of connected philanthropy to my community and how I feel connected to that.
Do you think that you will, as adults, young adults, and as you get older, will possibly give more? Will you volunteer more? I know that's a survey question. And did the course have any impact on that?
I think for me, the course was really useful in being able to recognize what makes a good nonprofit. So when we were doing the grant reviewing, certain things that we had to look for, like capacity and stuff like that, I had never really known about any of those things. So I think in terms of philanthropy for me moving forward, I'm definitely going to be more thoughtful about where I give my time. For me personally, I'm not pursuing a career in philanthropy, so to give my extra time, I'm definitely going to be thoughtful about all those things. And it's one of those courses where you take things away even when it's over. It's not, it doesn't stay there. And I took it about a year ago.
I think I have a similar answer for me personally. Rebecca mentioned something at the beginning of the day. It's not the fact that you give, it's how you give. I think that's really informing of the class, and that's the part that I took away. You know, it's strategic. It's not just, you know, giving money and then, you know, you feel good about yourself and you don't think about it anymore. You know, it's a step further than that. And I had the privilege to speak with Jodi. I am also working on a survey to send out to students who have already graduated, so not just after the class, but post-graduation, how and if they carry those lessons with them, and if it sticks, and if not just the knowledge, but the actions related to that knowledge are still active, as you know, you're fired up after the class, and if they stick with you. So, you know, I believe that for most students, and I hope that they would take that with them in their actions as well as what they know about it. And but I do think it's important in actually figuring if that's true, figuring that out.
Could I jump in on this?
Absolutely.
This is something that's struck me, not so much during when I was taking the course itself, but definitely in the years following, that the question of how one relates to the philanthropic world, as I think a lot of people have echoed here, it can be, if one doesn't have the opportunity to take a class like this, or one doesn't have the opportunity to speak with people who are involved in a foundation or something like that, the implications that has for diversity within philanthropy itself, but also in terms of who is writing grants and who is getting access to the philanthropic world, also what the standards are that are imposed upon nonprofits or projects or whatnot. I think there are just some definite disparities there. So one of the things that with Health Horizons we were very intentional about was one of the projects that we're working on with public health in the Dominican Republic is a water project to bring potable water to one of our partner communities on the North Coast. And rather than us just writing a grant and trying to get funding for digging wells or extending the aqueduct or something like that, we facilitated the formation of a water committee that is composed entirely of people from the community of Pancho Mateo, who did all of the analysis around determining what the need was in this community, and we coached them on how to present this information to the Ministry of Health. So I think it's phenomenal that these experiential learning courses exist at the college level, but one thing I'm really interested in is how to bring that knowledge and experience and just participatory engagement to the community itself that is being funded by these grants. So I don't know, just something that I've been thinking about in that.
And that's part of your work, your current work?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, and it's a long process, especially with international organizations. You know, the Ministry of Health is really slow moving in the DR, and you know, funding will be promised and then all of a sudden it disappears, and the community itself, it's challenging to keep people engaged. But when you know, we had formed this committee that was made up of probably like 8 or so people, and then they did all of this research, did this great presentation to the Ministry of Health, and then nothing ended up happening, and people were kind of disappointed and just like, and you know, we put so much work into this, but then there was an election, new people came into the Ministry of Health, and we decided, okay, maybe we can give this a go again. So what we did was we had a community-wide election to elect people to the water committee, and it was hugely successful. And so now there's a much more vibrant, much more engaged, just like rearing to go water committee, and we're really hopeful that some funding will come through. We did actually get some funding from the Peace Corps, so something is going to happen, but we're hoping that there will be some Ministry of Health funding as well. But it was all sort of like community-driven, community-engaged that ended up happening.
And really just ties ties right into the whole theme of this conference, is that, advocacy, community action. I think we'll just end by asking you if you can remember from your classes one of your favorite grants or one of your favorite nonprofits that you came across while you were in the class that moved you, about which you got very enthused, and it can be anything actually. Do you remember?
I'm really passionate about the organization that I made the video last year for, Mom's House.
Yeah.
And I think I was definitely passionate about it at the time. I think I actually hard to remember. I think I might have been the one that brought it in first. I kind of found it one of the ways that we didn't in my class we didn't have grant applications, but we sort of hunted and were okay, what are we gonna look for? We sort of did a scan of the area to see what organizations we wanted to focus on, and I sort of found it at the bottom of the the Decker Foundation page. So it was this foundation that gives a lot of money to various organizations in Benenson had it as one of the organizations that they give to, and I found it way at the bottom, and I was hey, what's that? And I looked at it and it just brought together all of my interests, reproductive health, mother education, prenatal health, and actual education. It's an organization that provides free daycare to any single parent working towards their degree. It can be their high school degree, it can be their bachelor's degree. So it sort of just combined everything that I had to get, everything that I cared about, and I was yeah. I just felt so great about it.
And it won the video contest last year. Yeah. So we got the wrap it up sign, but does anybody else have just the name of the organization and what it does that you loved?
I have one. So Haley House, they actually provided all the breakfast that we had today.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love how involved they are in our community, and Northeastern always has them cater our events. And they were actually an organization that we funded a few years ago before I was involved with the program. But just to see what a lasting impact they've had in our community, in our university's community. And one of our funding priorities this year was post-incarceration integration. So kind of just thinking of how they fit into that category too, and just seeing how they all interconnect and how much they've grown over the past few years, and how we know our grant has impacted them, and that I get to see it at practically every event that's hosted at Northeastern.
It's true.
So that's pretty cool.
And I was actually invited by Rebecca to Haley House, and it's incredible and vibrant place. It's really wonderful. Well, thank you all so much, especially our panelists who took their time out of their very busy days. Love having you. Thank you.